Okay, we'll start off now with January of the one cycle year. And we've worked this back. We see that January in the one cycle year is a 4 or 5 months. So what does a 4 or 5 month mean? Well, the one cycle year is a time when there's that real urge to get something started. So there's a strong desire to initiate some new action. But as you will recall, the 4 quality shows attention to detail, system and order. The 5 shows broadening out and action. And where we have the combination of the testing qualities with the action qualities, we find there that there is a great restlessness and a great urge to get started. But the 4 represents a quality of attending to technical details and to watching out for adversities. So the 4 or 5 month is a month when there will be a great degree of an urge to get something started, a great urge for action. But at that point in the cycle, it's not the time to start yet. It's a time when you find that you sort of just at loggerheads with everything because you want to get going and yet you can't seem to. The 4 tends to force you to be more detailed and think of things in a practical and orderly fashion. And yet the 5 is rather restless and an impulsive quality. So the combination of the 2 represents a quality that can be rather testing and challenging. It's a time when you have to really just pay attention to detail and not get too carried away, not try to rush in and start something major because you're being tested. So there's often a feeling of restlessness and discontent at that particular time. It's really a time when attention should be paid to detail and system. Here we see that with the 4 quality, it's relative to system and order. The 5 shows action, so the action should be directed towards putting things in order. In other words, looking after the small points, detail things that could become a problem later on, things that could trip you up, but not to rush ahead and get started on something new. With the 5, being rather impulsive quality, you have to guard your speech at that time because there's a tendency there to be a little bit quick in expression sometimes, possibly a little bit sarcastic, and just saying things that are sharp and cutting, which can end up causing a few problems. So it's a time when there's this great desire to get started, but the cyclic conditions in January of a one cycle year are saying that it's not the time right now. Just be patient and stick with what you're doing. One interesting example is individuals have started a job at that particular time because they thought, well, here I am in the 1 year, it's a good time to get something going, and taking on a challenge too soon and finding that everything comes apart a little later on in the cycle. And this is what happens. You think out in nature, if the farmer plants the seeds a little bit too early, they might start to sprout and they get caught by an early frost, so he has to replant again. So the point is to not jump the gun at this stage, recognize that it is a time to just be patient and work on the details. The proper seeding time will be coming a little later in the cycle, as we'll see. So use the time wisely, putting things in order and looking after the necessary things, and try to keep a lid on that feeling of frustration and discontent. Also with the 5 is relative to action, as we said before, so it's a time to be careful in transportation because the 4 shows testing conditions and the 5 shows that there can be an impulsiveness. So if you're driving or crossing the street, look twice and just be very, very careful so that you don't act without thinking, so that the end result is not a bitter experience. Another thing a person might do at a time like that, with a one cycle year, we know it's a key starting time. Maybe it's a time when you're thinking of changing a career. Well, rather than start the career here, maybe this would be an excellent time to do some of the detail work like, upgrading your resume, getting everything sorted out and ready so that when the time comes that you should be out there knocking on doors and talking to people, you're not sitting at home trying to scramble and find things and, update it at that late point, because then, with putting it off, then you've missed the key opportunity. So it's a time to just be very careful and be patient. Then we come into February, which we see as the 5-6. The 5 here represents broadening out and expansion, and we know that the 6 is relative to taking on responsibilities. So we find the month of February in the one cycle year is a time when there's more action relative to financial affairs and relative to settling responsibilities, looking after details, taking care of things that come up. There can be more activity relative to finances, as we said, but it's a time when you can broaden out a little bit more than in the 4-5. You don't have the same testing conditions there. So relative to the 6, it's a good time to perhaps look into refinancing. You've got a key seeding period coming up a little bit later in the year, so it might be a good time to reorganize your finances and get ready for that big start that you're planning a little further down the road, because conditions at this point are active and you can accomplish a lot if you work with the cycle. More keenly aware of new avenues of exploration with that 5, and more active mentally as well, because both the 5 and the 6 are active mental qualities. So it's a more stable time as well, because the 6 quality shows a degree of stability there, but it also means expenses tend to be a little bit heavier. With the 5, it can be a good time to do some necessary travel if that's part of your plans, and just keep active and pursue opportunities at that particular time. Then we come to the month of March, and we see March as a 6-7. So with the 6 there, we find there's responsibility. But with the 7, we come into that period that we said where expression was a little more withdrawn. And we find that things are a little bit unsettled in the first half of the month of March with that 7 quality. And it's a time when you're a lot more sensitive. Here you have sort of the strength and outgoing nature to get out there, talk to people, make contacts. But in the 6-7 months, you find you tend to be a little bit more withdrawn, and don't find it quite so easy to go out to people. Again, it's a month of decisions with a 6, and it's a time when you might have to pay out a lot. But the 7, as you remember, represents a fruition number. So the latter part of the 6-7 months, things start to settle down, and things can start to come to a more, not only more settled, but you can start to see the results of things coming together to result in a successful conclusion. So you find that with the 5-6, it's kind of a month here where, with the 5 quality, where you're a little more scattery, you're sort of going off in all directions. But here in the 6-7 now, things are starting to settle down and take a more definite direction. So it's not as an expressive time, and with the 7 in there, it represents a good time to get out into nature when you can, and just draw from the peace and the beauty of nature, and that'll help a lot in controlling some of that degree of sensitivity. It's a good time as well for reading and for studying things of that nature, because the 7 is relative to looking within, and the 6 is a strong mental quality. So if you have studying to do or things of that nature, it's a time when you just feel more inclined to sit back and quietly by yourself, do a lot of reading, do a lot of thinking, do a lot of studying.